Good morning once more. Welcome back on the AM show. And from sports, we get into other topical matters of national scope. I share with you my blunt thoughts for today, and I've titled it, Ghana's Pharisaic Misleaders, heaping burdens upon the backs of the masses that they themselves cannot carry. Ghana 4. I'm sure you recall or may have come across Jesus' tongue lashing of the teachers of the law and the Pharisees, aptly captured in Matthew 23 verse 4, where the Lord says, they tie up heavy, cumbersome loads and put them on other people's shoulders, but they themselves are not willing to lift a finger to move them. That, dear friends and fellow citizens, is unfortunately the exact kind of misleadership we have on our hands in Ghana today. Only yesterday, I was reflecting on the words of the founder of Perez Chapel International, Bishop Charles Ajinasari, who says, quote, our money is failing if it has not already failed, because our banks cannot even pay people's bonds, risk-free bonds. Why did he say this? The man of the cloth had a financial instrument of some 106,000 Ghana cedis in an institution which he decided to withdraw from. His bankers, however, told him this was impossible and that the only workable solution was for him to agree to a refund of 1,000 Ghana cedis of his investment each week until the bank's debt was fully paid off. That means 106 weeks, or alternatively, a whole 2 years before he can get his money back. And even that was the bank being charitable to him. How about the ordinary Kwame out there without the clout of Bishop Ajinasari? How about him? They would definitely not get such a reprieve. This shows clearly just how Pharisaic our misleaders are to us, heaping burdens on our shoulders that they themselves refuse to carry. But this also reminds me of that story from the heady final days of the collapsing Marxist experiment in the Soviet Union. Paraphrasing from Soviet novelist Chingiz Aitmatov, the story reads, on one occasion, Joseph Stalin, called for a live chicken and proceeded to use it to make an unforgettable point before some of his henchmen. Forcefully clutching the chicken in one hand, he began with the other to systematically and brutally pluck out its feathers. As the chicken struggled in vain to escape, he continued with a painful denuding until the bird was completely stripped of its feathers. Now you watch, Stalin said, as he placed the chicken on the floor and walked away with some breadcrumbs in his hand. Incredibly, the fear-crazed chicken hobbled toward him and clung to the legs of his trousers. Stalin threw a few grains to the bird, and it began to follow him around the room. He turned to his dumbfounded colleagues and said quietly, this is the way to rule these people. Did you see how that chicken followed me for food, though I had caused it such torture? People are like that chicken. If you inflict inordinate pain on them, they will follow you for food for the rest of their lives. My dear friends, I hesitate to say this, but say it I will. You do know chickens are often used in reference to cowards, right? I dare say most of us Ghanaians, by sitting down with our arms folded while our political misleaders dribble us in this perverse manner, while they pluck away at our very dreams, is very chicken-like. Most of us are chickens, cowards indeed. Our country is both broke and broken, yet many of us still stand aloof, either owing to blind political affiliation or self-interest. How can we be like this and expect better leaders who will usher us into real prosperity, that land of promise flowing with milk and honey? If you want to know just how callous, how Stalin-like our leaders are, you should take a good look at the latest Auditor General's report. Even with all that report's challenges here and there, it still depicts the endless, horrifying looting of our state coffers by political actors. Come with me for a second. Let's look at COVID-19 vaccine procurement, a la what the Auditor General has been telling us. In millions of American dollars, the amount paid to UNICEF and Avast summed up to 120.19 million. The amount utilized, 38.32. The deficit, 81.87 million. And we're still grappling with it, and they are telling us we don't have enough storage and all kinds of stuff. Story time. Special audit report on COVID-19 expenditure. Now, looking at the amount mobilized in 2020 in billions of cedis, the Finance Ministry tells us they mobilized 18.19 billion. But guess what? The Auditor General tells us actually, we mobilized 19.11 billion, and he's not even taking stock of some of what we accrued. You will find out in ensuing slides. About 3 of the major fund sources are not added by the Auditor General. Even this gives you almost 1 billion extra in cedis. Who is hiding what? The next slide, COVID-19 funding sources, Finance Ministry versus the Auditor General. So you see that here, the Finance Ministry has 9 sources from the Contingency Fund, World Bank, IMF, AFDB, European Union, the sale of BOG COVID-19 bonds for the 2020, 2021, and 2022 fiscal years. And then Korea, Germany, and the government of Ghana also contributed their quota. Guess what? That was not even part of the Auditor General's report. So 3 items were missing. And even with those 3 items missing, we still have a deficit of about 1 billion Ghana cedis. Let's go to the next slide. So look at the breakdown. Now look at Korea, Germany, and the rest. Look at what they contributed. 349 million. 280.99 million. The Bank of Ghana alone, 10 billion. You sum it all up and you get 25.68 billion. Much more than the about 21 billion that we were told was accrued. And then you look at the utilization of the contingency fund. 1.2 billion went into payment of allowances to frontline health workers, supply of food items, free water and electricity. We all know the story to that. Evacuation of Ghanaians, support for small and medium scale enterprises. We know the story to that as well. Purchase of various medical supplies. We know the story to that as well. Cost of mandatory quarantine of Ghanaians stranded abroad and all that. You look at the utilization of BOG COVID-19 bonds, some 10 billion Ghana cedis, and the receipts were expended on liability management, statutory payments to SNIT and the GET Fund, and budgetary support. Yet we are still paying the COVID-19 levy. Then the utilization of the IMF Rapid Credit Facility. The amount received was utilized on, again, liability management, district assemblies, NAPCO, LEAP, free SHS, free water and electricity, capitalization of the National Development Bank, construction of 88 district hospitals, issuance of Ghana cards, mop-up exercise across the country. Was this what it was supposed to be expended on anyway? I mean, some of them fit the bill, but others, you judge for yourselves. And then again, the World Bank's funds, the interventions, 430 million, medical equipment, cleaning materials, medicine, consultancy, storage facilities. We all know. So we're talking about storage facilities, yet we can't even take enough vaccines. Life insurance, construction, leasing, and renting of treatment and isolation centers. But it gets even interesting here. You've also seen that there was a development with an ambulance, or ambulances that were supposed to be procured. What we paid, $607,419, paid out of over 4 million in a contract for the supply of 26 Toyota Hayes Deluxe ambulances. Again, we couldn't even determine what our specifications were. The timelines, the contract was signed on 5th December 2021. The ambulances were to be delivered by 15th January 2022. The ambulances can't be found. No ambulances were delivered as of the 28th of November 2022. You look at the payment of unapproved risk allowances. This was on the blind side of the Chief of Staff, by the way. So the Ministry of Information paid themselves a total amount of 151,500 Ghana cedis as COVID-19 risk allowance. Who actually subscribed to that? So you see, you are drinking, eating, rolling, sleeping, and waking up in mismanagement and corruption. Yet you are busily and freely giving financial haircuts to ordinary Ghanaians while you people line your pockets with our money. How wicked can you be? It even irks me more when we talk about painfully glaring problems in this country and people supposed to be leaders act as though we had no right to hold their feet to the fire of accountability. You've heard undoubtedly about the Pandai district in the northern region and many other parts of the country where pupils study without desks and even sometimes under trees, right? You've heard of those 8 pupils who lost their lives very recently when their canoe capsized on the Volta Lake, haven't you? Before I wrap on that and conclude on my thoughts for today, let me bring you some information tied to our educational system in Ghana. Our Human Capital Index, according to the World Bank, the index measures how much capital each country loses through lack of education and health. It also measures the amount of human capital that a child born today can expect to attain by age 18, given the risks of poor health and education that prevail in the country where he or she lives. It also ranges between 0 and 1, with 1 meaning maximum potential reached. With those parameters clarified, let's look at how Ghana has been performing. 2018, we scored 0.44 or 44%, meaning only 44% of children born in Ghana at that time would become productive when they grew up. We ranked 116th out of 157 countries. 56% of Ghana's human capital will go waste in the next 18 years because of the poor quality of the country's educational system. The same system, Yao Osei Duchum, education minister, says is famous. 2020, we scored 0.45%, just about 0.001% in addition, or 45% if you want to roll it over. Only 45% of children born in Ghana at the time would become productive when they grow up. 55% of Ghana's human capital would then go waste in the next 18 years. Look at this. When you look at the harmonized test scores, Ghana scored 307 in the harmonized test scores. It measures how much children learn in school based on the country's relative performance on the International Student Achievement Test. But guess what? The very minimum is 300. And advanced attainment is 625. We were just a shade, a hair above the minimum. That is where we are. So let's not kid ourselves at all. We are not in a good state. There is this African proverb that poignantly says, the sheep will spend its entire life fearing the wolf, only to be eaten by the shepherd. A typical case of our leaders for you. We were sick and tired of wearing the shackles of colonialism, and thanks to Nkrumah, we were able to shake them off. But after Nkrumah, those who came would plunder us like we see in its worst form now, worse than even the imperialists. What a Pyrrhic victory. We won, yet our losses since then have been so heavy that they outweigh the victory we achieved. Our leaders have made complete nonsense of our so-called independence, which is why I am on a crusade for us to cut the piffle, the nonsense of Independence Day celebrations, and rather invest those sums of money, like we would in Pandai, which would honorably simply end up in people's pockets anyway, for shady contracts. We should divert that to other projects like providing desks for school children in the Pandai district of the northern region, and many other parts of our country where our little ones, the most vulnerable in society, whom we should be protecting at all costs, crawl on the bare floor like lizards just to study. What country does this to its own? And yet, when we speak of this, the education minister gets offended and goes on ranting about my media organization. Such leaders can go to hell for all I care. If you are not living up to expectation and get called out, you do what must be done rather than blame the one who has exposed your inefficiencies. Our education minister has become the complainer in chief on everything education. Yet what has he really brought to bear that has fundamentally transformed our pedagogy and the bettering of our learning systems since he took over? I'm not saying he has done nothing. No. I speak specifically in terms of pedagogy and what real quality we are delivering. The sector minister cries more than even those bereaved, and he expects us to clap for him? No way. That's not how we do it. You were not out at post to lament, but to solve problems. Finito. We shall rather take him to task today, tomorrow, and the day after that, whether he finds it distasteful or not. We are not here to please anybody. Our work is not that of praise or praise-mongering. We are here to ensure every Ghanaian gets the best possible deal from these misleaders who pretend to be diligent leaders. So, Mr. Education Minister, hey, you're too fuatie, naja kutiano. Such arrant arrogance in leadership is what has led us to this vile shame, not fame. It is such a shame. In the days of old, we're perplexed about the colonialist wolves, but now it is the so-called nationalist shepherds that are destroying our lives. Imagine that. Sad. So darn sad. But Ghana, our Ghana, the land of the warrior king, will arise again from the rubble. The stump shall again bear a tree. Our resilience with God's unfailing help will see us through. We shall someday make Ghana, our motherland, truly great and strong. My name is Benjamin Akako. I say all these because I am an extremely passionate Ghanaian, passionate about Ghana and what her future, intricately tied to ours, holds. These are my blunt thoughts served for you raw, hot, and edited, undiluted. God richly bless our motherland and make her great and strong.